So we're gonna do a book dippin' episode. I don't know. I'm really having fun doing these. I filmed a bunch of them, but this one is going to be, it's like jumping ahead. It's jumping ahead on the list because, oh, and by the way, this book dippin' thing, I am making a quilt history documentary. I've been working on this project for a couple years and I just want it to be, but now because of the pandemic, it's always something, you know? So, but I have all this research. I mean, I just have boxes and boxes of quilt history material because the documentary is on quilt history. Okay, I don't know if I said that. And so until I can like move on with the project, until we can move on with the project, I thought I would just, I want to change my social media. I'm going to post something about it, but it's just fun to share this stuff with you, okay? I had to move out of the office that we were renting because of the pandemic, so I've got all this stuff in my house, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to share what I have. There's so much. There's so much. I have so much. Ooh, hidden in plain view. How about that? We're going to talk about that a lot in one of the episodes of, oh, The Quilts Must Go On. Yeah, okay, this is a little segment called Quilts To Go. I have all kinds of things in the works. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much. Look at this. This is a book in Japanese about the exhibit of quilts that they had in, where was it? Anyway, okay, I've got this one lined up because we're gonna do a book dipping on that. But anyway, I just want to share with you all this stuff I know because you know what? There's a lot of content out there for quilt people about how to. There's a lot of how to, there's a lot of fabric stuff. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of, hey, this is what I'm making. And I love those things. I am gonna post a here's what I'm making post. But my beat in this quilt world is looking at quilts in context of history and culture. That is what I love. I didn't know that when I started making quilts, but I figured that out along the way. And about 5 years ago, I was like, I think I like reading about quilts and writing about them and thinking about them as much as I like making them. And that's a pretty big deal because I really like making quilts. Because of all the reasons that it's great to make quilts. So this is a very controversial topic, which is why I just had to do it because we all need a little controversy. I found this online. This is a thesis by Rebecca H. McCormick. I read quilt history, like textile, like thesis material for fun. I really do. Because you're gonna die. It's so good. Okay, so Rebecca H. McCormick, who I have not contacted about this, I'm just basically excited about her thesis. This thesis was submitted to the graduate faculty of George Mason University, Jelly, in partial fulfillment of the requirements for the degree of Master of Arts of History of Decorative Arts. Yeah, sounds awesome. Like, I wish I could do that too. So her thesis is called The Cutter Quilt Fad, 1980 to Present, a case study in value making in American quilts. Who among you knows what this is? This cutter quilt thing. I know it looks a little Norman Batesy in my house, but I had to close the shutters to, there's no room here because my husband is working in the other room and there's this just very small apartment. Anyway, so the cutter quilt thing, do you know what this is? It is the phenomenon of people cutting up old quilts, you know, presumably old quilts to then use in different projects, like clothes, like teddy bears, like couch cushions, stockings, I mean like Christmas stockings, and the like, okay? Now, these cutter quilts, which are they're called cutter quilts, sometimes sort of subtly, but other times like straight up cutter quilts, you can find them on Etsy. These are quilts that have presumably outlasted their use. They're beat up. They're not gonna work anymore for, you know, for the bed or whatever. I mean, I have a quilt that I love that could be considered at this point a cutter quilt, and I'll show you why. So I love this quilt very much. I actually bought it at a quilt show. Okay, it's amazing. I love it so much. I love everything about it. Oh God, I didn't plan this very well. Okay, so it's fabulous. It's got shirting prints, and it's got these beautiful 8-point stars. And it's just fantastic, right? I just love it. Oh, but look at that. Oh, that's a really good shot of what's happening to this quilt. So there's a lot of damage to this quilt. And it wasn't like this before. It's a long story, but this is falling apart, right? The fabric has been torn away. Because a lot of the dyes that were used in fabric from, in the 19th century, they just didn't have the dye technology. Even in the 20th century, dye technology gets better and better. And so, a lot of the dyes that they had at the time this quilt was made, which was probably like, I don't know, like 1890, like for real, like quilts last a long time. And you look at the oldest fabric and the newest fabric to try to determine the date of a quilt. I am not a quilt appraiser. I am not a quilt dating person, but I don't date quilts. Okay, I'm married, so back off. Anyway, so but dyes would go fugitive. I'm getting off topic, but dyes that would fade or rot. Some of the dyes would rot away the fabric. Are called fugitive dyes. Anyway, so this quilt is falling apart. Okay, and it could be argued that it would be cool to offer this quilt to someone to use it for parts, basically like sell it for parts or give it for parts. And someone maybe would use a jacket, make a jacket out of, pieces of this beautiful quilt, I mean, this is looking good, you could like use parts of that for something else. But it's a very controversial thing. And the reason that it's controversial is because when you, like, to cut up a quilt means you cut up a quilt. And my husband, Eric, I was telling him all about this, and I was like, it's a very controversial thing, to cut up these quilts, but personally, I get it. I do. I mean, it's sort of like, well, what are you going to do? What am I going to do with this quilt? And like, say I hold on to it for 10 years. I mean, at a certain point, it's going to be used in the car. I don't have a car, but, it'll be in the car, or maybe it'll be given to somebody who has a basement, who's trying to, cover furniture or something. This is what happens to quilts. This is where they go to die, basically. So what if I could give this quilt to an artist or a garment maker, and she could, or he could do something new with it? And I'm like, I really get that. But then I was like, the problem is you've got to cut it. And Eric, who totally appreciates everything about quilts and what I do and all that, he was like, ooh, like he winced when I was like, and I was like, you see, because quilts are amazing. They're incredible objects. It's like they have a soul. It's like they're people. I mean, the idea that you would cut into this, I mean, this is hand-pieced. It's hand-pieced and it's hand-sewn. And what I mean by that is with a needle and thread by hand, right? Because using your sewing machine is also technically quilting by hand or piecing by hand because you're using your hands. Anyway, we talk about that later in an episode of The Quilts Must Go On. But it's hard. Like, I couldn't do it. I could not cut this up. I couldn't do it. And so that's what cutter quilts are about. So when I found this thesis, I was like, oh, this has been on my mind. And so Rebecca H. McCormick, she got all her signatures, so she got her master's degree. Congratulations. So I just want to read you something, because the point of all this is to book dip, right? And talk about really interesting topics in quilt history and quilt culture and all of that, because like, we should be talking about this stuff. If you love quilts, I mean, like, buckle up. There's so much out there about what we do, right? Not just how to do what we do, but about what we do. And I haven't even gotten through all of this, but I was like, oh, I want to talk about it. So I haven't gotten through all of it. I've only actually gotten to page 20 out of like 70, but a lot of this, no, like 60. Okay, so maybe this is part one, but I want to tell you about what she focuses on in this first part is Ralph Lauren, because Ralph Lauren in 1982 got a huge amount of attention for his fall collection. And he got this attention because he used quilts. Real ones. He used material. He cut up quilts, okay? He cut up antique quilts and used the fabrics, used the material. I mean, he kept the patchwork intact. He cut up quilts just like this and constructed garments from them. And I'll put some pictures up here. So they're just on the internet. But these clothes were like, I mean, people freaked out. I mean, people freaked out in the fashion world because they loved them, but quilter people freaked out because they're like, how dare you? How dare you cut up these quilts? Because remember, like, quilts are different. This is not, we're not talking about like polyester pants, man. Like, these are quilts. You can't do that. You're ruining like our heritage. And Quilter's newsletter ran like a big ad, and people were just, they were furious. And this is something, I have to read this. And then I'm gonna close up because, you know, I'm trying to keep these things short, but there's so much to say. So I'm gonna read this, and then I'm gonna put it to you, because isn't that what the comments are supposed to be for? The comments below a video, like for discussion? What if we actually had a discussion? What if we didn't fight? What if there was content on the internet that just wasn't a fight? You know? Like, let's talk about, well, this could actually be a fight. My point is, what do you think about this cutter quilt thing? Like, do you get it? Do you get why old quilts should be allowed to be cut up? How would you stop someone from doing it? Because let me tell you, Ralph Lauren was not the first. McCormick says it was never before had anybody cut up quilts for this, but actually I object because Adolfo was a fashion designer in the 70s who made clothes for Gloria Vanderbilt, and he cut up crazy quilts. But anyway, you know, fashion designers today are still doing this. Calvin Klein, Emily Bode, there's all kinds of examples of this. But what do you think? What do you think about it? Is it okay? Is it very much not okay? I honestly think probably it's going to be 50-50 of people who say that is a crime against humanity, and people who are going to say, yeah, totally. If a quilt has gotten so it's threadbare and the batting is coming out, use it for something else. That's good. Okay, but here's what Ralph says. This is a great quote. Thank you, Ms. McCormick, for including it because it's really interesting. Okay, it's like super problematic, Ralph. Okay, so Ralph Lauren, when he got all this, you know, crap about how dare you do this, he said, I'm a lover of American art, not a destroyer of it. I've taken the best quilts and given them a new dimension. More people will see them and admire them. And besides, so I like that, right? Okay, cool. New dimension. I like how he said that, very articulate. Then he says, and besides, how many quilts can you put on a bed? In a New York Times article, he explained further, who says quilts should be confined to beds or walls? Agreed. The colors, designs, and handiwork are so special. Why not wear them? Oh, shit. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, he's got a good point, right? Okay. Though they were by no means museum, so this is still Ralph, though they were by no means museum quality quilts, I did pay several $100s a piece for them. There's so much wrong with that, I just don't even know where to start. Had I made these clothes of new material, it would have bastardized the concept. A little much. The whole charm is in the fact that the materials are old and will continue to look beautiful with age. And all of the clothes that he made for that collection had a tag that was like, these, it has the text in here, you know, these clothes have been, you know, made from heirloom materials. And something that bothers me, and then I'm going to close up and we can talk about it in the comments, but something that really bothers me is in this thesis, and I'm not trolling Ms. McCormick at all, but in this thesis several times, and Ralph Lauren and his whole thing, they keep saying early American, you know, in earliest America, you know, these people were making quilts and we're just like, you know, going back to like the roots of America, you know, the first Americans making quilts. The colonists did not make quilts for the last time. Nobody was making patchwork quilts in the colonies. The 1600s, there were no quilts, okay? We'll talk all about that. I will set the record straight. in A Brief History of the American Quilt, which is an upcoming, depending on when you're watching this, it already exists on the internet, but it's a lecture, I shouldn't call it a lecture, it's a talk that I have produced for the internet. And it's A Brief History of the American Quilt. And I talk all about how the colonists didn't make quilts. They didn't make patchwork quilts like these. These came later for a lot of reasons. So I really like making these little videos. I hope it's not too long. I know the internet has a very short attention span, but I know that you, if you have patience enough to make a quilt that you love, I suspect you have a bit of interest in this kind of thing. So I hope so. And if you don't, that's okay. There's going to be like 5 people who probably like it, and that's cool. We can talk about stuff. So thank you, Rebecca H. McCormick, for writing The Cutter Quilt Fad, 1980 to Present, a case study in value making in American quilts. We just book dipped, we thesis dipped out of one of the big boxes of stuff that I have. And yeah, I mean, what else are we going to find in here? Oh, look at this. A little teaser. Look at this, an old issue of Quilter's Newsletter. What are we going to find in there? It's all up for grabs, people. All right, I'll see you later. Thanks for watching. Bye.